Thank you very much for accepting my invitation and accepting to be on my show.
Well, what would you like to talk about? Would you like to talk about my books?
Yeah, I want to talk about your books and about the work that you do. I want to tell about you and your work you and your work to my audience.
Okay, I live outside of Memphis, Tennessee, but I'm originally from Ashland, Kentucky, which is about 10 hours away from here. And my family, and before that, I lived in Hartford, Connecticut. I was a newspaper reporter for the Hartford Courant, which, if you don't know, the Hartford Courant is the oldest daily newspaper of continuous publication in the United States. That means they didn't miss an edition. For 200 and something years, they haven't missed putting out a newspaper. In fact, when my husband's a reporter, and when we got married, his parents had found in this garage sale an old copy of the Hartford Courant with the death of George Washington announced on page 2. And that's what we got for wedding presents. In fact, I'm looking at it right now across my dining room. So my husband and I finally, he got a job in Memphis and we moved here. We have 2 grown children, 2 daughters, and they've given me 4 grandchildren. So yay for me. My oldest granddaughter, I have to brag on, just accepted a scholarship to play softball for Tennessee State University on a full scholarship. So I hear you have a dog barking. Do you have a dog?
Yeah,
What kind of
no,
dog do you have?
it is a dog which is there in my neighbor's house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Because I have a dog too, and she barks. In fact, I hope she doesn't interrupt our talk. She's a puppy, and I can't do anything with her. She just is all over the place. So you don't. It's your neighbor's dog, right? So I have in my family, besides my husband and my children, I had a younger brother, but he just recently passed away. So now I have cousins. Do you have lots of cousins and brothers and sisters?
yeah, I
Do
have.
you? How many
Yeah,
brothers and sisters do you have?
I have one brother and one sister, and I have two brothers, cousins, and one cousin sister, and yeah, and one brother.
So are they around? I mean, do they?
Yeah, very near. Not in my home, but very near to my house. They live
Okay.
very near. Yeah,
Are you the youngest?
not young. I think my number is 2.
Because they say that the youngest, of course, is always the most creative.
Okay.
I'm the oldest, but my brother was a businessman.
Okay.
But anyway, um, when we moved to Memphis, I worked as a freelance writer. Do you know what a freelance writer does? Yeah, and I wrote speeches for Federal Express executives. I wrote speeches for the school board, the Memphis school board. I wrote magazine articles. I did publicity. I did all this stuff. And after my husband retired, I said, I was working at the time for the Memphis Symphony Orchestra, which was a great job. I loved the musicians in the Memphis Symphony Orchestra. They were so wonderful. In fact, some of them are still my friends. But after when my husband retired, I said, you know what? If I don't start writing the great American novel now, when am I going to do it? I mean, look at me. I ain't getting any younger. So I decided I would enter this contest. And I wrote they asked me to write the first chapter of a romantic suspense novel. And that's a novel that has a lot of mystery and a lot of intrigue. And then in the end, the hero and the heroine wind up together in romance. So I did. And I'll be darned, I won first place. So in the 21st Duel on the Delta, sponsored by the River City Romance writers. So after that, I thought, well, I'll give this a shot. And one of the things that I've always been interested in is race relations in America. It's been a very troublesome problem, as you probably know. It's been we still have a lot of trouble in the United States over race relations. In fact, every country does, don't they? Don't you have somebody always that you're trying to put down that somebody else is trying to put down?
Yeah, that is there everywhere on this planet.
It is, yes, and it's a plague not only in the United States but in every other country. But I was interested in it because I grew up in Kentucky, but I went to school at the University of Georgia, and then I transferred to the University of Kentucky. And it was during that turbulent time in the 60s. You don't remember, I'm sure, except through your history books, if you read about such things, but that was a very, that was a bad time for the United States, where Black people were trying to get equal rights with whites, which is ridiculous to even talk about now. It should have been done long, long, long ago. But this was the time of the sit-ins, and when the Birmingham church was burned. So I became very interested in this period of history. Now, since I had lived through some of it, now I wanted to write about it. One particular thing sort of interested me. There was an organization that got two couples to try to go into American communities and try and buy homes. One couple was white, one couple was Black, and they had the same money, they had the same background, they wore almost the same clothes, they did everything the same, and yet the Black couple couldn't get a house anywhere except in the Black neighborhoods. And they were steered toward that. And oftentimes they couldn't even buy a home because the banks would say, well, we're just not going to loan to you. So I got to thinking, what would happen if those same couples had been paired together to investigate the murders that occurred in the Deep South during that terrible time of the 60s, when Black people were trying to get equal rights, their civil rights recognized. So I came up with a character named Madeline Sterling, who is a white Bostonian, and Socrates Gray, who is a Black man from the South. They were recruited by an organization called Justice Tomorrow. And you can read about their what we call the backstories, who they are and how they got started on my webpage. That's a freebie for people who are interested in Sterling and Gray. So these two detectives go undercover in southern towns where murders have been committed of civil rights workers. And they gather the information to convict the killers, and then they slip out of town and hand it over to Justice Tomorrow, keeps it until the time when they feel like Southern courtroom. You may know that oftentimes in Southern courtrooms, no matter how good the case was, white defendants got off. They were never punished. So Justice Tomorrow said, there will come a time when you can find justice in Southern courtrooms. and there's no statute of limitations on murders. So they save the information. In this story, Justice Tomorrow, Sterling and Gray go undercover in a little town called Crossville, Georgia, to investigate the lynching of a teenage boy who was the son of a civil rights leader. And what they find out is that there's a whole lot more going on in Crossville than anybody realizes. There's murder, rape, forbidden love, there's arson, and Sterling and Gray get all caught up in this, and they have to uncover who did it, and then they have to get out alive, which is the big point. How do you get out alive? So that was the first book. And well, no, actually that was my first novel. But before I actually wrote that out, finished Justice Tomorrow, I would write a novella about, because we were in the middle of, and I'm sure you're going through it too, the COVID epidemic. Are you still in quarantine?
Yeah, it's 9 p.m. here. From 9 p.m. to morning 5 a.m. There's a curfew. Curfew means a lockdown.
Right.
Yes.
So, David, would you mind? Let me ask my husband to do this. Would you get me a copy of the books? They're in the pantry there. So I wrote in the middle of the plague of the COVID, when you're still in lockdown, but we're not. Yes. So in the middle of the lockdown, I decided I would write a book about to this period, the greatest epidemic in American history. It's called The Yellow Fever Revenge. Here it is. Can you see it? Some reason or another, I can't see you, but anyway, can you see it? This is the book, and it's just a novella, which is a short book. It's not big enough to be a real book. It's just a small, and it's about a young woman who was raped and had a child and had to run to hide her shame back in the 1800s. And she runs to Memphis in 1826, which is 1848, about the time of 1878, excuse me. She runs to Memphis and gets a job in a millinery store, which doesn't pay very much. So she gets another job of another sort because she and her child are starving. And she keeps up the facade of being an upstanding citizen while she is also a lady of the evening. And while she's working in the millinery shop, she runs into the wife of her rapist, they've just moved to Memphis. Well, what's going on in the middle of this? The yellow fever is coming upriver to Memphis, and it kills 5,000 people in Memphis. 20,000, over 25,000 people overnight almost leave Memphis, and only 15,000 people are left, and they're quarantined. And you know how they quarantine? If they tried to get out, their neighbors from towns down the river would hold them at shotgun and make them go back. Trainloads of people couldn't get off the train if they were from Memphis. So they were stuck with people. It was absolutely horrific. So this woman is pressed into service as a nurse. And eventually she falls in love with someone. And eventually she's called to nurse at the home of her rapist. And I'm going to leave it to you whether she kills him or helps him. But that was a novel that came out in the middle of the pandemic. Would you consider that to be poor timing, that someone would release a book like that in the middle of a pandemic?
No, it's
Would,
I think that is the best time because everybody is in home. They have time to read.
do you want to read about a pandemic? The yellow fever back then was really absolutely, they didn't know how to treat it, for one thing. And if you ever want to read about it, The American Plague by Molly Caldwell Crosby is just fantastic. This is a work of fiction, but she wrote The American Plague is a true story. She wrote true stories and true history of plagues. And her account of Memphis is just, well, don't bring a snack when you come and read her book. So I've had some stories published in other books. Here's one. This is called Mayhem in Memphis, and it won a prize for the best anthology at the Imaginarium Convention of Writers and Filmmakers, but creatives in Louisville 2 years ago. And it's an anthology of stories written by the authors in Malice in Memphis, which is a killer writing group. We're the people that when we see you, we're immediately looking for creative ways to kill you in our stories. So this is the Mayhem in Memphis book that I have a short story in that one. And let's see. Oh, this is another anthology that won a prize, and I have a short story in this one. This is where the Yellow Fever Revenge came from originally. But Elmwood, in case you don't know, is a cemetery in Memphis where yellow fever victims were buried, where famous people were buried. So that's what this one is about. Then we have this one. I love this book. Low Down Dirty Vote, Volume 2. This is, I am incredibly honored to have a story in this short story collection. There are 22 crime writers, some of whom are just M.J. Holt, for one. My favorite is the one that won the short story, is in the best short story anthology of the year. Faye Snowden, One Bullet, One Vote. Honestly, it's just so sad. An Era of Inequality. It's just it really is a wonderful collection of short stories. My story in this is called Two Dead, Two Wounded. And it's about one of my relatives who got in a fight in a Kentucky polling place. And there were 2 dead and 2 wounded after the fight was over. Kentucky politics is a blood sport. So I am very honored to have a short story in Low Down Dirty Vote 2, mostly because of the people that are also in it. So that is the story of my life as an author. I hope that I will shortly be finished with the sequel to Justice Tomorrow. And the sequel is called Price of a Future. And it traces Sterling and Gray after they leave Crossville, Georgia. Some terrible things happen in Crossville and some pretty awful, amazing things. But they have to live with what happened in Crossville. And how do they do that? How do they make a life for themselves after they have done all these things that happen in Crossville? It also, yeah. Also, you have to do a lot of research for these books. So I'm still working on that. Does that help you out? That tells you something about me in my books?
Yeah, I completely understood you.
Do you have any questions? Any questions for me?
So, how many books have you published in your life?
3. One I pulled because I didn't like it. But there are 2 for sale on Amazon right now. Justice Tomorrow and Yellow Fever Revenge, the novella.
Writing is your full-time job?
Writing is my full-time job, although in the springtime, it seems like going to baseball games is my full-time job. My grandson is a pitcher for the high school team. My youngest grandson is playing what we call rec ball, baseball. He's a pitcher. My granddaughter is finishing up her senior year in softball, so she has games to go to. My husband is a coach, baseball coach, volunteer. So I find myself going to a lot of baseball games. Now, Saeed, ask me what my least favorite sport is.
Yeah.
Baseball. My least favorite sport. So I'm going to all these baseball games, and the only thing I like about it is I get to see my grandchildren play. That's the only thing. So spring writing is my full-time job. It's always been my full-time job, but now I'm doing fiction, and I really enjoy it. I loved being a newspaper reporter. My years at the Hartford Courant in Hartford, Connecticut were just some of my best years. But I'm also enjoying being here in Memphis and doing fiction writing. And I love being president of Malice in Memphis. There's some crazy people. And we before the pandemic, a group of us would go out to breakfast or out to lunch, and we sit around talking about poisons and how long it took people to hang and what kind of blood spatter would be. All these things that go into a mystery story or murder story, and people around us would go, "What? Serious? What?" So what is your life like? What do you do when you go out with your friends?
My life,
What do you do?
I have completed masters in software engineering.
Wow.
Yeah, and I got a job in Canada.
Really? When do
Yeah,
you go? When do you go to Canada?
maybe in 2 or 3 months I'll be in Canada.
Where in Canada?
Toronto or Vancouver.
Toronto is a terrific city.
Yeah.
I've been to Toronto. It's wonderful. I haven't been to Vancouver. Do you travel a lot?
I travel virtually.
What? Oh, you travel virtually. Oh. I you know, I've traveled quite a bit, and I miss it so much. I cannot wait till this stupid pandemic is over. Everybody needs to get their vaccine. Get your vaccine so we can go back to traveling. And I want to go to Germany. Have you been to Germany?
Yeah, I want to go. That is one of the favorite places of mine.
I want to go there. I want to go there in Oktoberfest because I love beer. Do you like?
Yeah,
I like.
yeah, I like watching.
I'd like to go maybe at Christmas time when they have the the festivals there. I want to go to Germany. I want to go to Australia. Have you been to Australia?
No.
Neither have
This,
I. I want to go. Um, I I want to go back to China. Have you ever been to China?
I'm not a traveler like you.
Oh. Well, I got, when I was coming out of college, everybody traveled. So everybody traveled. When every time you got a vacation from work, you'd take 2 weeks and you'd go quickly to Europe and do whatever you could in 2 weeks and come back to your job. It was I grew up at a great, I think I grew up at a great time. And some of those times I put in my stories, and sometimes I don't. But, well, sometimes I don't want anybody to know what happened on those travels. Seriously, I was so dumb, I don't want anybody to know I was that dumb. So, how did you get started doing these videos, these
I
shows?
just, yeah, I just thought that is it possible for a human being to connect with all human beings, different human beings who are into different professions and who are into different parts of the world. So I got that thought and I started it, and I never thought that it becomes this bigger. So I think in last 6 months I did more than 350 or 360, 370 plus interviews.
Wow. Well, congratulations. If
Thank
you
you.
can invent a way for somebody not to hack your email, I would appreciate it very much. I don't support the death penalty for any crime except hacking someone's email. Then I do think you deserve the death penalty or hacking someone's bank account. That hacking is just seriously. In a world of technology, people want to be able to depend on something, and that's it. So I think we ought to be very strict with hackers. And this,
I I even if they do that, I'll put my content in other platforms.
uh,
They
well,
should feel tired. I should not. I will not.
for somebody like me who had trouble getting on Skype, being hacked is a terrible thing. So, um, where are you? Where are you now? In Pakistan, India,
I'm from India, South India.
South?
My state name is called as Telangana.
I've never been to India. I'd like to come to India. There are so many places I would like to go. Where would you like to go besides Canada?
So after Canada, once I step into Canada, my thought is to come to US. There are a few states I want to visit, and Germany. That is one of my first favorite place. I think the top one of the top places which I want to visit: Germany and Europe, Italy, some European countries, Italy, and
Yes.
yeah, some Turkey. Um, there are some beautiful countries, so
Yes.
which looks visually amazing.
I I have always thought that the country that was the most beautiful that I've never seen, but I've seen it in pictures, is Greece. I'd love to go to Greece and see if those pictures are true of all the blue water and the Acropolis and all the Pantheon, all these buildings that were left over. It really makes you feel, gives you a sense of history to look at places like that. And um, I I think too often, and maybe this is why I write historical fiction instead of modern fiction or chick lit or something. I really think we've forgotten our history. We've forgotten our American history. We've forgotten our world history. We just don't seem to learn from the mistakes of the past. Why is that? Why don't we learn from the mistakes of the past? I think what you're doing with all these videos, showing people of different countries and what they do and the writing that they're doing is just really important because we don't know each other and we don't understand the history that we've come from. And that I think that's one of the reasons that I really think Sterling and Gray, the characters in my novel, as they go through this historical period, some of the issues that I'm raising about how people treat each other and how women and blacks are treated, I think that's important to remember and to take a look at in a safe place. Fiction is a safe place to look at terrible things and terrible issues. And then once you see them in a safe place, maybe then you can take it out and put it in on the table and look at it and go, okay, well, we need to do something about that. I read a lot of, I love history. I do. I love history. And that's why that's part of the reason I'd like to go to Germany, because I want to learn about see the places where the Second World War happened. And I want to go to Greece because, oh my goodness, who has not studied the Greek gods and goddesses? So, I think my love of history will take me I hope will soon take me to those places. I lived a summer working for a United States senator in the Senate office building. My senator was a Republican senator from Kentucky who was a former ambassador to India. His name was John Sherman Cooper, and he was quite a nice gentleman. And I worked with him for a summer, and I learned a lot about American government and a lot about how bills are passed. And it doesn't work like that anymore, like it did when John Sherman Cooper was a senator and I was an intern in his office. He was a Republican, and I can remember I cracked a joke about a Democratic senator in front of him. And he turned to me and he said, "Jackie, we have to get along with Democrats. They are going to be the ones who help me pass this bill. These are our friends and neighbors, and we have to learn to compromise and find a way to work together." And he was working on an agriculture bill. He said, "This senator is going to help me get this bill passed, and this bill will help a lot of people in Kentucky." And I've always remembered that. That was really imprinted on my mind. There weren't very many people around. It was the way he felt. That was the way the United States government worked back then, back in the early 60s. And it does not work like that anymore. I think we have to learn the lessons of history. We have to go back and learn how to figure out how to compromise and get together and get along. I don't think this is just an American problem, by the way. I think this is a problem worldwide. We don't know how to get along with each other. We don't know how to compromise. You get a little, I get a little. Nobody gets everything. Don't you think that sounds like a good philosophy? You get a little, I get a little. We're both happy. I'm for that. So what else would you like to know about Jackie Ross Flaum, soon to be great author? What?
You can continue. I'm listening to you.
Oh, I know. I just want to know what you want to know.
You're telling about the things that we need to know, historical books and the information.
I think, well, I did a lot of research for Justice Tomorrow, and I'm doing a lot of historical research for Price of a Future, because I want the books to reflect the history of the time and give people that safe space to look at some of the terrible things that happened and say, oh, that's terrible, and then go away and think, wonder what we can do about that. Wonder if that's happening today, how can we fix that? Um, the terrible part about writing about something that you lived through. See, I was in high school during the civil rights era and had just begun to move into college. And I can remember when my parents, I didn't have a lot of personal experience. Well, I had some, but not a lot of personal experience with racial injustice, or seeing it or watching it, because my town, there weren't a lot of African Americans there, and I was young and sheltered and frankly stupid. But after I grew up and took a look back, I can see where I was young and naive and sheltered and stupid. But on my way to the University of Georgia, I think was the very first time I ever smacked, or racial injustice was, I got smacked in the face with it. We stopped, my parents drove me to college, and we stopped at this gas station in Georgia to get gas and to go to the bathroom. And I walked around the side of the gas station to find the ladies' room, and there were two doors. And it said white women, colored women. And I was like, I was shocked. I'd never seen anything like that. I don't know, that just struck me right between the eyes. And I came back into the car and I went, what is going on here? This is stupid. Are you telling me that there are two, that colored people and white people have separate bathrooms? What? My mother, who had been to school in Georgia, had to explain all this. And she said, what will you do when you get to Georgia and you have a black roommate? And I said, I will say, hello, my name is Jackie. Who are you? What's your name? That's what I'll say. I still to this day cannot get over how shocked I was and how naive I was to think that all those things that I had read about were not really true. I mean, I knew they were true because in those days we trusted newspapers and TV, but I didn't think they had not hit my heart. And after that moment, after I saw those two restrooms, it hit my heart. And my eyes were open and I began to look around and see what was going on. I think that's one of the reasons I write books about racial injustice, because I was in those days so young and stupid and blind. Maybe not blind, maybe the word is so self-absorbed, like young people are. Do you think you're self-absorbed? Like you don't see what's going on in the world?
Yeah.
Do you? I mean, what are some of the things that you've seen that you've been shocked about?
You.
Me? Why?
Because I never seen any person talking like this.
Oh, about what? Talking, you mean about racial injustice?
No, you're unique. You're not talking like all other people who was there already in my brain.
Oh, you mean I have a Southern accent?
You have your own style.
Yes. Well, you should. My husband is from upstate New York, and he has all the mannerisms of New York, brusque and sort of, but he has from 30 something years of living in the South, he has a Southern accent. And his sister, who lives in New Jersey now, gives him a hard time about it and he says, I don't have a Southern accent. And she makes fun of him. But yeah, I do have a Southern accent. So what else would you like to know about Memphis? Oh, I can tell you about Memphis. I love Memphis. Not only do we have Memphis in May, but we also have a film festival here that is for independent filmmakers that's getting to be quite famous. And it's a great place to see films and new films and to make films. You might know that Memphis is the home of Elvis Presley, Graceland, and Sun Studios, where all the rock and roll began. We have the Grizzlies, which is a pro basketball team that my husband and I love to follow. We have the Lorraine Motel has been converted into the Civil Rights Museum. And if you ever come to Memphis, you have to go through there. It is, if you ever want to understand race relations in the United States, you have to go through the Civil Rights Museum. It is just mind-blowing. As you know, Martin Luther King was assassinated in Memphis. He was standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel and was shot by a crazy man from across the street, by a sniper. The Lorraine Motel was turned into a museum, the Civil Rights Museum, and then they also took over the building where the assassin stayed and where he shot, the window where he shot from. They took over that building and made that part of the museum. It's quite extensive and well worth your time. There are some amazing places to eat in Memphis. If you like pork barbecue and pork ribs, do not go to Texas where they pass off beef as beef ribs and as barbecue. That is not real barbecue. Pork is real barbecue. But anyway, you can go. There is the train station, Union Station, has been converted into this wonderful place to go and eat and stay. And of course, we have the Peabody Hotel, which is the South's Grand Hotel. And in the center, there is a great fountain. And in the morning, ducks come down from the tower or from their home on the roof of the Peabody, and they march out of the elevator and into the fountain, and they stay in the fountain all day. And then at a certain time, the duck master comes and takes them back up the elevator up to their home. And that's called the March of the Peabody Ducks. And you can see that in the Peabody lobby twice a day. You can sit and have a wonderful cocktail. It's gorgeous in the lobby. Or you can go into the restaurant and have high tea, which I know you're familiar with high tea. It's just a great British custom that when I was in Hong Kong, we had high tea at the Peninsula Hotel back when it was a grand hotel there. And it was quite nice. So anyway, that's my little tour guide, my pitch for coming to Memphis. It's a wonderful, whenever we can all get vaccinated, get your vaccine, get vaccinated and come to Memphis. We have an independent book club, independent bookstores here, too. One is called Novel and other is called Burke. I love independent bookstores. This is, if you don't know, it's Independent Bookstore Day, Indie Bookstore Day. So let's hear it for the independent bookstores who keep authors like me alive. What else would you like to know about me? My dog is unruly. She's just a puppy. Also, my children are unruly, but they're grown up and they have to deal with themselves. I have a daughter here and I have a daughter in Los Angeles. And each of them have children. So if you want to know, and being a grandparent is a lot more fun than being a parent. So don't do the parent thing first. Go straight to the grandparent stage. Parents have to lay down the rules and enforce them. Grandparents don't have any rules. They just let the grandchildren do and say and have whatever they want. This is why children love their grandparents.
Yeah, correct.
And tolerate their parents.
Correct. But every grandparent should be is a parent someday.
Everybody should have. Do you have grandparents?
Yeah, I have. I have a grandmother who is with your age.
Ah.
Yeah. Who do what you are doing.
Oh, she's a writer?
No. Who do what you said just now.
Oh, who spoil you, who give you whatever you want. Good for her. So what else do you want to know? I hope that when people see this video, that they will go to their to Amazon or to their local bookstore and get Justice Tomorrow or The Yellow Fever Revenge, and let me know what you think. One thing about writers, we love feedback. We love when people say, I just fell in love with Elizabeth McAllister. The Yellow Fever Revenge was just so heartwarming. Or, I got so mad at Sterling in Justice Tomorrow. Why did she do that? As one person told me, I had to stop every 5 minutes and say, Sterling, don't do that. You know that you're going to get into trouble. And that's, writers live for that kind of feedback. So if you read a book, please drop a comment in Amazon or Goodreads or Instagram, someplace, and let people know that you just read a good book. I promise you, it will make some author's day.
So I'll put the book links of yours in the description of this video. People who find our video on YouTube, they will buy your books.
Good, thank you. I hope so. And I've enjoyed talking to you. You've been a very good listener. I also appreciate your hanging with me while I tried to figure out the simple thing of how to get on Skype, which I'll probably have a terrible time trying to figure out how to get off Skype.
So, yeah. So, at last, have you seen videos of mine on YouTube?
I have seen them.
So, what you felt as a experienced person?
What do I think is I love the author who gave the Yiddish blessing, and the engineer from Germany, the software engineer. You all got off on a place where I couldn't follow because it's technology. I thought, I really should go to something that I understand, which is when I went to the authors. So yeah. And I also think, which brings me to another thing, we all tend to stay in our own little bubble. And I applaud you for having people on of different occupations and challenging yourself. You're a software engineer, challenging yourself to talk to people and learn about people who do a lot of different things. And the struggle, writers who talk about their struggle to put their book out there and to create these characters and to create hopefully a memorable experience for the reader. I applaud your sticking with everybody, listening to them talk about that. I think we need people like that, people like you. I hope you decide someday to go into politics because you're a very good listener. And we don't have listeners anymore. So.
Politics, okay. I will remember you saying this. And the first person will come into my mind when I decide to put my leg into that system. I will send you a message.
Yes. And I'll be able to say, I knew Sai when he was making videos. And now look, he's the Prime Minister of India.
So definitely. So it actually blown my mind. I never thought that a person from a particular place is talking about the things that you are talking. It's a completely new experience for me talking with you.
Really? Well,
Yeah.
I'm happy that I hope it was a pleasant experience. Um, I I think there are a lot of people like me in this country and in this city and in this state. I think there are a lot of people around the world who are like you. We just have to find a voice, and make sure that the good that is in us comes out in our work, in our books, in our lives. We can't go on being ugly to each other, either as people or as countries. We can't go on like this. This is not the way the universe was created to be. So, and remember, it's Independent Bookstore Day, so go buy a book at an independent bookstore.
Definitely. I want everybody to see her books, and it will be as good as she is talking now.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah,
Thank you very much, Sai.
yeah. So, can I put this video and audio clip on my YouTube channel, on my social media, on internet, on my social networks, and on podcast everywhere with your on website everywhere with your permission?
Absolutely. If you think I have something to say to people and that people might want to hear, and I'd love for people to read my books. So yes, sir. And
Thank you.
I hope to see more of your work.
Same to you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Sai. Let's see if I can get off here without blowing up the Skype.
Yeah. So thank you very much, ma'am, for giving me your valuable time and spending your valuable words here, not in your book.
You're very kind to have me. Have fun in Canada.
Yeah. Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much. Keep doing what you love and make people feel very happy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.